you can't. You just can't. If you start listening to every criticism, it'll tear what you do apart, because the criticisms are, many of them, mutually exclusive. The people, there are going to be people who think it's moving too quickly. There are going to be people who think it's moving too slowly. People who think there's too much violence. People who think there's not enough violence. And we make the show that we want to watch. We would want to watch if we were reviewers. So
that's fair enough. That's understandable. But you can't use that virtue to neglect and reject a criticism of your work. As an artist, it's up to you to interpret it and deal with criticism internally and decide how to deal with it. Criticism is inevitable, and it will vary in attitude and severity. If you put yourself out there, you need to deal with it rationally. Now, to this day, D&D have not argued with people online against the criticism, as far as I'm aware, much like Rian Johnson did with Star Wars, and I hope they at least have the integrity not to do that, regardless of whatever the case may be regarding what happened behind the scenes of Game of Thrones. Also, what D&D are saying here doesn't apply to the criticism of Game of Thrones. Yes, albeit some people prefer different levels of violence and even sex scenes to other, but I think everyone universally agrees that it's good to have substantial payoffs to plot threads and logical consistency, such as the fiasco with the scorpions and the dragons. Sure, don't listen to people who are complaining about if something is too fast or slow, unless you're clearly padding out runtime with Tyrion walking for 5 minutes in the finale. But if people are telling you that the plot itself has many holes, and they are providing proof, you need to listen to those people. Hello everyone. Today I will not be dissecting the disaster that was Season 8 Game of Thrones and what didn't work narratively. That will come later. Not to mention that there are hundreds of videos already setting the record straight and extrapolating on why Season 8 was such a dire disappointment. It would be redundant of me to follow suit until I really added something to the table. The consensus seems to be that Season 8 is quite possibly the worst final season in television history, with the most underwhelming finale considering the TV show's overwhelming exposure. First and foremost, I would like to tackle the common riposte for the criticism of this season, that it was impossible to unanimously please everyone with a universally satisfying ending because Game of Thrones is just that massive.
Well,
there's too many elements to be able to please everyone.
Yeah, you're not going to tie everything
too complex a story.
I mean, if you're going to write a story and you're willing to put all these setups of different threads and elements, then you really should be up to the challenge of paying them off. So to say there's too much story and elements is just, well, why should there be too much? There should be no such thing of having too much. The amount of setup should be corresponded by the payoff. This is the defeatist's mentality, to say that you can't have a satisfying ending just because there is so much build-up, anticipation and expectations is insane. The main problem with this argument is that it's under the assumption that everyone has different problems and expectations with the show in varying aspects, but that's not really the case. Everyone is criticising the declining quality of writing and storytelling, in that there is no logical consistency or no payoffs for things clearly brought up in earlier seasons. It is all the people thinking objectively and basing their scrutiny on what has been told to us beforehand. Whether it's been told the Night King is supposed to be this pragmatic, intelligent creature of magic to the point of inhumanity, or the lack of a discernible reason why Daenerys would commit to that extremely contrived decision that wasn't really set up. The writing has concluded with a bunch of absolute dribble. Yes, it's impossible to please absolutely everyone with a piece of expressive art, but that is not a response to the criticism of the show. That's just a corporate nonsensical sweeping generalisation that doesn't really mean anything, evident by HBO's response. For example, John Wick 3 will not please everyone because those looking for a decent plot to follow won't find one, but those looking for mind-blowing action pieces, expertly choreographed fight scenes and tongue-in-cheek humour will enjoy it. However, when 90% of your viewership is telling you that something is shit, don't shrug it off with that response, because in this circumstance you have borderline pleased no one. It's not the same as John Wick, you see what I'm saying? Indicated by the decline in the IMDb ratings of the episodes in Game of Thrones, this is quite apparent. So yeah, it's hard to satisfy everyone on a scale this broad, but that isn't an excuse to give up trying and hurl the script notes in the air in a tantrum. There were so many plot points that were simply not concluded in the finale, and things did not logically add up. That is a fact. Stop saying it's impossible to have a satisfying ending to something that is developed, just because of the sheer fact that it's well developed. It's a poor argument. Now that mentality might be one of the reasons why we've ended up with this wet fart of a finale in the first place, as this is what I'm trying to decipher in this video. What on earth was going on behind the scenes that resulted in this rushed drivel? The first explanation that comes to mind is revolving around the intense secrecy of the script of Game of Thrones. I understand that there is so much secrecy and protection of the script to avoid people leaking spoilers, but regardless of the reasoning, I think that it is ultimately resulting in poor writing. I'll explain. I can quantify this as a writer myself. When there is so much confidentiality in the script writing process of a film, it will henceforth be getting much less feedback in the process. Less eyes looking over it and seeing what works and what doesn't. In Game of Thrones' case, I think it's safe to assume that the only people who are allowed to read the scripts are the actors, although they themselves are sometimes instructed, and the producers and studio executives, which are the people who more often than not could not care less if the script works narratively. They're only concerned with it financially. Neither of these are efficient sources of feedback, because actors are just actors and producers are just there to ensure the production is financially viable. That's their job. I would hazard a guess that the producers of such masterpieces as Transformers: Age of Extinction, the Emoji Movie, and the finale of Game of Thrones just compared. I would hazard a guess they actually know what they're reading is hot garbage, but they will look past it because they know it will make money. They're only concerned because it's their job. They are supervising the script for business purposes. And focus groups test audiences. What do you think that blockbusters such as Star Wars, Avengers Endgame and Game of Thrones feel like they need to do that shit? Probably not. I mean, thank God Avengers Endgame got it right for the most part. This leaves an empty void where real objective feedback is missing, but is made unwarranted when the movies or TV shows are projected to literally break records anyway, which they do. We all know script secrecy does get pretty intense with gargantuan blockbusters, as Mark Hamill referred to being on set of episode 9 like being in the FBI. The script secrecy does have good intentions, I understand that. They need to ensure that the film is not spoiled for millions of moviegoers worldwide, but I think it has this negative byproduct that creates for a poorly developed script most of the time. Here's the thing, I'm a writer and I've been working on a script for some time now. I've almost got it to a stage where I'm happy to expose it to the lions, submit it to Coverfly for feedback and send it to friends and family for their insights. But if I'm ever to successfully transform my idea into a finished film, it will most likely go through 40 people for feedback and scrutiny before that happens. That is an essential must if you want to succeed as an artist, because being your critic isn't enough. You need to know what the populace thinks, because ultimately the populace will be your audience. It can run true that an artist does their best work in their humble beginnings, because they have rigorously put their heart, soul, blood, sweat and tears into a perfect piece, whereas the writers of Game of Thrones, D&D, no longer need to do this, so they didn't. They didn't garner any genuine feedback, I'd probably guess. Like no second opinions, just themselves. I don't know this for definite, but this is what I'm estimating happens behind the scenes in these big blockbusters. In order to further reinforce the script secrecy and decrease the likelihood of the script or set footage being leaked and revealing spoilers, fake endings were written and even shot in an attempt to nullify the potential leaks of on-set photos of Game of Thrones. Whilst I understand the reasoning behind this, I think it might have resulted in the poor writing we got. Think about it. Miscommunication is not a rare mishap in the filmmaking process of bringing the script to screen. There are many departments who need to act in harmony in order to do so. So what if there was a misunderstanding and we were accidentally given one of the fake endings as the actual finale of the show, and because it was too late, when they realised the mistake, they just played along with it? Would this not explain why the ending seems so rushed and frantically paced? Because it was only there as a decoy? If this sounds absolutely ludicrous, it's because it is, and I'm joking around. Yeah, obviously I'm joking, but God, I would really like to know what they wrote into these fake endings, if this is the quality of the actual official ending, full of contrivances, inconsistencies, and naivety of how its own world works. This tinfoil hat theory of mine would actually explain the level of ineptitude. Maybe in the finale, Ira disguises herself as Drogon or even the Iron Throne and lurches to Dany from a trampoline. Then Dany catches her by the throat. Ira's distressed, caught off guard by her strength. Jon comes into the room. Ira yelps for Jon to save her. Jon responds but she's my queen. My Night Queen. Then Dany's eyes turn blue, and so do Jon's. Then Dany turns Ira to a White Walker. The White Walkers win the end. Okay, whilst editing this, I've just realised something that makes the scene where Ira kills the Night King even worse. So she's meant to be this master of assassin and of stealth, but as she's leaping towards him, she's fucking screaming her head off. Why would she do that? No wonder no wonder the Night King fucking turns around. Also, so I was looking at the table read for the finale and listened to how they describe the scene where she leaps at the Night King.
She vaults off a pile of dead whites, leaps at the Night King, and she...
So obviously there's nothing inherently wrong with this in the script, but that isn't what we got. So you're telling me they couldn't get the whites or something, or they couldn't pull off the shots, or they just had it inexplicably just fucking jump like 10 feet into the air. But jokes aside, I can't help but wonder whether or not having to dick around writing fake scripts and taking time to shoot them had a negative impact on the production of the actual finale. But the main point is that the severe lack of feedback and overconfidence in the scripts for these massive films are probably what causes them to lack in the creative writing department. Especially if you have managed to garner a big audience with 8 years of build-up, character development and world building. You should expect nothing less than an unbridled rage when you forget what good writing even is when it comes to its conclusion. On the other hand, I've also heard rumours that the duo of writers, commonly referred to as D&D, were wanting to be done with Game of Thrones 3 years ago. If this is true, then this all essentially comes down to apathy for the series. It would explain the apparent race to the finish mentality in Game of Thrones and the missing culmination of countless plot threads that were just sidelined. Most of all, it really explains why the last 2 seasons, the season that should really have the most runtime, had less episodes. Season 7 had 3 less episodes than usual, and Season 8 had 4 less. 4? It's unbelievable. This is why people were expecting the episodes in Season 8 to be like 2 hours long, because there was so much to bring to a conclusion, but the effort, thought and care was not put into finishing the story they themselves set up. D&D are clearly capable of writing much better than this. They are good writers, proven by seasons 1 to 4. I mean, can you imagine if Avengers Endgame was among the shortest films of the MCU? It would result in the same shit as this, a rush to the finish. I know Endgame didn't quite have to be as long as it was. There's a few 5 minutes that didn't need, but Marvel absolutely understood that you need far more time to conclude years of storytelling with numerous different parallel plot threads. Okay, so if D&D were really tired and fatigued of helming Game of Thrones, then there is nothing wrong with that fundamentally, but they should have been replaced by new writers who are actually passionate about Game of Thrones, like D&D once were. But in reality, D&D still penned the scripts all the same because they wanted that paycheck. So to have the best of both worlds, they just rush to the finish line that is their paycheck, so they can fuck off on holiday and isolate themselves from the internet because they knew that what they wrote was fucking shit. And they can just move on to Star Wars and ruin that, I guess. Maybe they'll put more effort because they actually want to do Star Wars, who knows.
Be together?
Oh, we're not. We are going to take our wives to an undisclosed location.
But you will be together.
We'll be together, 4 of us.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, we'll together, and we're just going to turn our phones off, turn our
going
computers
offline,
off, and
drinking a lot of tequila.
Yeah, drinking tequila and coming back when it's over.
But yeah, that's just about all I wanted to say about this. I just needed to vent about the blatant laziness and apathy behind the scenes of this in terms of screenwriting. There are some screenwriters who pen scripts not due to their passion for the source material, but for the money to be made from it. There are some scripts that have come to fruition thanks to countless pieces of feedback that have helped to mould it into the best story it can possibly be. This is not what we've got here. HBO were willing to throw all the money they needed to finalise the story of Game of Thrones. I think it is clear that D&D were not willing to reciprocate and put in assiduousness and care by the end of the show. Now, I can't be 100% sure about this, so be sure to comment down below if you disagree with me, or if you have some information relevant to this I'm unaware of. Thank you for watching, see you next time.